Emperor Vextar stood on the crystal balcony of his palace, watching the stars above his homeworld dim one by one. Each fading light meant another Zephyrian colony had fallen to the Krillian horde. The savage aliens moved through space like a plague, consuming everything in their path. Their black ships left nothing but empty worlds and scattered debris. The Emperor's blue skin had lost its royal shimmer. Dark circles surrounded his large violet eyes. He had not slept in 3 rotations. The weight of an empire rested on his thin shoulders, and that weight grew heavier each day. "Father," came a voice behind him. Princess Lyrelai approached with soft steps. Her silver hair flowed like liquid metal down her back. She wore simple white robes instead of her usual royal dress. Even she understood that this was no time for ceremony. "The Defense Council waits for you," she said softly. Her voice carried the same worry that filled her father's heart. Vextar turned from the view. His daughter looked so much like her mother. The same gentle features, the same kind eyes. But where her mother had found peace, Lyrelai would find only war. The Emperor had failed to protect his people. Soon he might fail to protect his daughter too. They walked through corridors lined with warriors from across the galaxy. The Emperor had sent messages to every mercenary company, every military contractor, every hired gun he could find. Desperate times called for desperate measures. In the Great Hall, alien warriors of every shape and size waited. The Korvac mercenaries stood 8 feet tall, their red scales gleaming under the lights. Their leader carried weapons that could punch through starship armor. The Nexarai assassins moved like shadows, their black suits making them nearly invisible. Each group cost more than most planets earned in a year. Admiral Thyros, the Emperor's oldest friend, stepped forward. His uniform was covered in medals from 100 battles. "My lord, we have assembled the finest warriors money can buy. But there is one more group requesting an audience." Vextar nodded. "Send them in." The doors opened. A single figure walked into the hall. He was small compared to the other warriors. His skin was pale pink, almost white. He had no scales, no armor, no visible weapons. He looked weak and soft. Some of the mercenaries laughed, but Princess Lyrelai gasped. She grabbed her father's arm with trembling fingers. "Father, no. Not him." The human walked with slow, measured steps. Each footfall echoed in the silent hall. The laughter died away. Something about the way he moved made even the biggest warriors step back. He stopped before the throne and bowed his head slightly. "Your Majesty," the human said. His voice was quiet but clear. "I am Marcus Chen. I represent the Terran Defense Collective. We offer our services." Lyrelai's grip on her father's arm tightened. She had read the reports. She knew the stories. Humans were new to the galaxy, but their reputation had spread like wildfire. They fought without honor. They used tricks and lies. They won battles they should have lost, but the cost was always terrible. "Father, please," she whispered. "I've heard what they do. The humans don't just fight wars. They turn wars into nightmares." Vextar looked at the human. Chen stood perfectly still, waiting. His dark eyes showed no emotion. No anger at being questioned. No pride in his reputation. He simply waited for an answer. The Emperor had heard the stories too. 3 months ago, humans had defended the mining world of Proxima 7. The planet should have fallen in hours. Instead, a small human force had held off the entire Krillian advance fleet. When the smoke cleared, 60,000 Krillian warriors were dead. Only 12 humans had died. But the reports also mentioned the aftermath. The human commander had used Krillian prisoners as bait. He had blown up his own medical stations to deny them to the enemy. He had ordered civilian evacuation ships to fly straight into Krillian gunfire to create confusion. The tactics worked, but they left scars on everyone who witnessed them. Admiral Thyros leaned forward. "Your Majesty, perhaps we should consider all our options before deciding." Chen spoke again. "Your fleet movements show you have perhaps 2 weeks before the Krillians arrive in this system. Your outer colonies have already fallen. Your defense platforms are outdated. You are outnumbered 20 to 1. The hall fell silent. Everyone knew the human was right, but hearing it spoken so plainly was shocking. "We can change those odds," Chen continued, "but our methods may disturb you. We do not fight with honor. We fight to win." Lyrelai stepped forward. Her royal training took over even as her hands shook. "What exactly do you mean by that?" Chen turned his attention to her. For the first time, something moved behind his eyes. Not cruelty, but something almost like sadness. "Princess, your people value honor in battle. You fight with rules. You show mercy to surrendering enemies. You protect civilians above all else. Yes, she said proudly. That is who we are. The Krillians do not share those values. They will use your honor against you. They will pretend to surrender, then attack. They will hide behind civilian ships. They will torture prisoners for information, then kill them slowly to break your spirit. Chen paused. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. To defeat monsters, sometimes you must become something monstrous yourself. We are willing to bear that burden for you, but once you hire us, you cannot tell us how to fight. You can only choose whether to watch or look away. The Emperor looked around the hall. The other mercenaries were brave and skilled, but Chen was right about the odds. The Krillians had overwhelmed every force sent against them. Traditional tactics had failed again and again. Not him, father. Lyra Lai cried. I'm terrified of that human warrior. She turned to face the assembled crowd. Can't you see what he is? He's not here to save us. He's here to drag us down to his level. Vextar closed his eyes. He thought of his people on distant worlds crying out for help that would never come. He thought of his daughter who might not live to see another year if he chose wrong. He thought of his wife who had always told him that leadership meant making the hard choices. When he opened his eyes, his decision was made. Mr. Chen, what are your terms? Chen nodded slowly. Standard rates. Full tactical command during combat operations. No interference from your military. No questions about our methods until after the war is won. Agreed, the Emperor said. Princess Lyrelai stared at her father in shock. Around the hall, the other mercenaries began to murmur. They had just been replaced by a single human who carried no visible weapons and commanded no visible army. Chen bowed again. We will begin preparations immediately. My ship will arrive within the day. I suggest you prepare your people for what they are about to see. As the human left the hall, Lyra Lee felt a chill run down her spine. She had read the intelligence reports about human warfare. She knew what was coming. Her father had just signed a contract with something that might be worse than the enemy they faced. But as she watched Chen disappear through the doorway, she realized something that frightened her even more. Deep down, past all her terror and revulsion, she was curious. She wanted to see what the humans could do. And that desire scared her most of all. The human ship appeared at dawn, sliding out of hyperspace like a shadow. Princess Lyralee watched from the observation deck as it approached the orbital station. She expected something impressive, something that would explain the fear in every intelligence report about human military might. Instead, she saw a ship that looked like it had been through 100 battles and barely survived each one. The hull was patched with different metals. Scorch marks covered the armor plating. One of the weapon turrets seemed to be held on with welding and prayer. That's their warship? Asked General Korik, standing beside her. The old Zephyrian soldier had fought in 12 campaigns. His 4 arms crossed over his chest as he studied the approaching vessel. My transport shuttle has better armor. Admiral Thyros joined them at the window. His face showed the same confusion. Intelligence reports said humans had powerful ships. This looks like salvage. Lyrelay said nothing. She had learned not to trust appearances when it came to humans. The ship docked with barely a sound. No fanfare, no ceremony. Just a quiet click as the airlock sealed. 20 minutes later, Marcus Chen walked onto the command deck. He wore the same simple clothes as before. Behind him came 6 other humans. They looked just as ordinary. No special uniforms, no impressive weapons, no ceremonial gear. They could have been traders or miners, General Korix whispered to Admiral Thyros. 7 humans? 7 humans to fight the entire Krillian horde? Chen heard him. General, how many Zephyrian soldiers do you have ready for combat? Korix puffed up his chest. 50,000 of the finest warriors in the galaxy. Each one trained since childhood. Each one ready to die for the Empire. Good, Chen said. We'll need them. But not to die. Dying is easy. Winning is hard. One of the other humans, a woman with short gray hair, stepped forward. I'm Lieutenant Sarah Knox. I need access to your communication systems, your sensor networks, and your supply manifests. Why? Asked Admiral Thyros. To understand what we're working with, Knox replied. Your people fight like this is a sporting match. Rules, formations, honor codes. The Krillians fight like this is breakfast. They want to eat you and they don't care how it tastes. Princess Lyrelai watched the humans spread out across the command center. They moved with purpose but also with something else. Caution. Like they expected an attack at any moment, even here in the heart of Zephyrian space. Chen studied the tactical displays. Show me your defense plan. General Korix activated the hologram. It showed the Zephyrian fleet arranged in perfect formation around the homeworld. 3 defensive lines, each one stronger than the last. Ships positioned according to centuries of military tradition. Beautiful, Chen said. But he didn't sound impressed. He sounded sad. Sir? Korix asked. Your formation is perfect for fighting other Zephyrians. Clean lines of fire, clear command structure. Everyone knows their role. Chen touched the display, highlighting weak points. But the Krillians won't play by your rules. The hologram changed. Chen's hands moved over the controls like he had been using Zephyrian systems his whole life. They'll come in 3 waves. First wave will be small ships, just enough to make you think you're winning. Second wave will be medium cruisers, positioned to look like their main force. You'll commit your reserves to stop them. And the third wave? Asked Admiral Thyros. Dreadnoughts. Coming in from the system's edge while you're distracted. They'll punch through your weakened lines and go straight for the planet. Chen's finger traced the path on the display. Game over. The command center fell silent. Everyone stared at the tactical display. Chen had just described their defeat in 30 seconds. How do you know this? Lyrelai asked. Chen looked at her. For a moment, she saw something in his eyes. Not cruelty, but weariness. Like a man who had seen too much. Because it's what I would do. Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring. Lieutenant Knox looked up from her station. Contact. Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace at the system edge. General Korix rushed to the sensors. Krillian scouts. Just like you said. Small ships, maybe 50 of them. Chen was already moving. Admiral, I need you to follow my orders exactly. No questions, no delays. Lives depend on it, Thyros hesitated. Following orders from an alien went against everything in his training. But the Emperor had been clear. What do you need? He asked. Pull back your outer patrol ships. Make it look like you're scared. Let the scouts get closer than they should. That's madness, Korix protested. We should hit them hard and fast. Show them our strength. Chen turned to face the general. His voice was quiet, but it carried across the entire command center. General, how many times have you fought the Krillians? This will be my first time, Korix admitted. I've fought them 17 times. I've won 17 times. Do you want to make it 18? Or do you want to die with honor? The general stepped back. Around the command center, other officers watched the exchange. They had never seen anyone speak to Korix like that. Admiral Thyros made the decision. All outer patrols fall back to secondary positions. Make it look reluctant. On the tactical display, Zephyrian ships began pulling back. The movement looked clumsy, panicked. Princess Lyrelai watched the Krillian scouts advance, taking the bait. Now, Chen said. Lieutenant Knox, activate the mines. What mines? Asked Thyros. Knox smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. The ones we planted while you were all arguing about formations. Space erupted in silent fire. 50 Krillian scouts vanished in coordinated explosions. The mines had been invisible, undetectable, waiting for the perfect moment. But Chen wasn't done. All ships, emergency jump now. Jump where? Thyros demanded. Away from here. The main Krillian force is about to arrive. If we're still here in 60 seconds, we'll all be dead. The Admiral hesitated for 3 seconds. 3 seconds that felt like hours. Then he gave the order. All ships, emergency jump to coordinates provided by human command. The Zephyrian fleet vanished into hyperspace just as massive Krillian dreadnoughts emerged from the void. Princess Lyrelai watched the tactical display from their new position, hidden behind the system's largest moon. The Krillian ships searched the empty space where the Zephyrian fleet should have been. Confusion rippled through their formations. They had expected to find a proud fleet waiting in perfect formation. Instead, they found wreckage and silence. Chen watched their reaction with satisfaction. First lesson complete. Never be where your enemy expects you to be. General Korix stared at the display. You knew they would come early. You knew exactly when and where. I know how they think, Chen replied, because I think the same way. The difference is I think one step further ahead. Princess Lyrelai felt her hands trembling. In 30 minutes, this human had destroyed 50 enemy ships, saved the entire fleet, and completely changed how she understood warfare. And this was just the beginning. She looked at Chen, who was already planning the next move. His calm expression never changed. He could have been discussing the weather instead of orchestrating a war. That terrified her more than any Krillian dreadnought ever could. For 3 days, the human fleet hid behind the moon. Princess Lirelei watched Marcus Chen work, and with each passing hour, her understanding of warfare changed completely. The humans did not plan battles. They planned nightmares. Chen stood over a holographic map of the Krillian fleet. They had spread out across the system, searching for the missing Zephyrians. Their formation looked powerful, but Chen saw only weakness. "Lieutenant Knox," he said, "show me the supply lines." The display changed. Red lines appeared, connecting the Krillian ships to their support vessels. The enemy fleet was massive, but it needed constant feeding. Fuel, ammunition, food, medical supplies, all of it flowing through predictable channels. "Admiral Thyros," Chen called. "I need you to broadcast a surrender message." The command center fell silent. Every Zephyrian officer stared at the human commander. General Korik stepped forward, his 4 hands clenched into fists. "We do not surrender," Korik said. "We are Zephyrian warriors. We die with honor." Chen looked at him with those cold, dark eyes. "General, do you want to die with honor? Or do you want your children to live without fear?" Before Korik could answer, Princess Lirelei spoke. "What are you planning?" Chen turned to her. For the first time since they met, he smiled. It was not a kind expression. "Princess, the Krillians think like predators. They see weakness, they attack. They see strength, they test it. But they never expect their prey to become the hunter." Admiral Thyros understood first. A false surrender. "We make them think they've won," exactly. "But not just any surrender. We're going to give them the greatest prize in the galaxy." Chen pointed to the hologram of the planet below. "We're going to offer them Princess Lirelei." The command center erupted. Officers shouted protests. General Korik drew his sidearm. Admiral Thyros stepped between them, trying to maintain order. Lirelei raised her hand and the room fell quiet. "Explain." Chen spoke calmly, as if they were discussing dinner plans. "The Krillians want to break Zephyrian morale. What better way than to capture the Emperor's daughter? They'll bring their entire command structure to witness your surrender. Every important leader, every flagship, every symbol of their power." "And then?" she asked. "Then we kill them all." Lieutenant Knox stepped forward with a datapad. "Princess, we've analyzed Krillian behavior patterns. They always celebrate victories the same way. Public execution of important prisoners. They'll want the entire galaxy to see you die. That means they'll gather in one place," Chen continued. "All their leadership, all their pride, all their symbols of power. And in that moment of triumph, when they think they've won, we'll turn their celebration into their funeral." Lirelei felt her blood turn cold. "You want to use me as bait?" "I want to save your people," Chen replied. "This is how we do it," General Korik exploded. "This is madness. We don't sacrifice our princess to aliens." Chen turned to face him. When he spoke, his voice was soft, but it carried clearly across the room. "General, how many Zephyrians have died while you've been arguing about honor? How many worlds have fallen while you've been following the rules?" The general had no answer. "The Krillians understand one thing," Chen continued. "Power. Not honor, not mercy, not justice. Just power. They respect only strength. And they show mercy only to those who can hurt them more than they can be hurt." Admiral Thyros stepped forward. "What's the rest of the plan?" Chen activated the hologram again. "First, we broadcast the surrender. We tell them the princess has convinced her father to give up. We offer her as proof of our sincerity." The display showed Krillian ships beginning to move, drawn to the bait. Second, while they're celebrating, our real fleet moves into position. Not here, not where they expect us. We come from the system's outer edge, using their own supply ships as cover. Lieutenant Knox took over the explanation. "We've spent 3 days studying their patterns. Supply ships arrive every 6 hours. They come from the same direction, use the same routes, follow the same security protocols. We're going to replace some of those supply ships," Chen said. "Zephyrian warships disguised as Krillian cargo vessels. They'll fly right into the heart of the enemy fleet." Princess Lirelei began to understand. "And while they're distracted by my capture, these disguised ships will be in perfect position to attack." "Exactly. But that's not the best part." Chen's smile grew wider. "We're not just going to destroy their fleet. We're going to make them destroy each other." He touched the display and it showed communication frequencies. Krillians use voice recognition for their command codes. But their technology is crude. A good mimic can fool their systems. Lieutenant Knox stepped forward. "I can replicate any Krillian voice pattern in real time. During the confusion of the attack, I'll send false orders to their ships, make them fire on each other, Change course into friendly ships, overload their own reactors. General Korix looked sick. That's not warfare. That's butchery. Chen turned to him with cold eyes. General, butchery is what the Krillians did to the colonies of Xerion Prime. Butchery is what they did to the civilian evacuation fleet at Centauri Station. Butchery is what they'll do to your homeworld if we fight them with honor. He stepped closer to the general. This is war, not a game. There are no rules when extinction is the alternative. Princess Lyra Lee watched the exchange. She saw the disgust in her people's eyes, but she also saw their fear. They were losing this war with their honor intact. Maybe it was time to try winning dirty. I'll do it, she said. Everyone turned to stare at her. Admiral Thyros stepped forward. Princess, you don't have to. Yes, I do. She looked at Chen. If this plan works, how many Krillians will die? Most of their fleet. Maybe 300,000. And if we fight them with honor. Chen paused. Your entire civilization dies. Every man, woman, and child on every Zephyrian world. Lyra Lee nodded. Then the choice is simple. Admiral Thyros broadcast the surrender message. Tell them I convinced my father to give up. Tell them I'll personally deliver the formal surrender aboard their flagship. Chen looked at her with something that might have been respect. Princess, there's one more thing you need to know. What? When the attack begins, you'll be alone on their flagship. Surrounded by thousands of enemy soldiers. There's a good chance you won't survive. Lyra Lee met his gaze without flinching. Mr. Chen, if my death can save my people, then it's a bargain. For the first time since they met, Chen's expression softened. Princess, now I understand why your people fight so hard to protect you. But don't worry, you won't be going alone. What do you mean? Chen smiled, and for the first time it looked genuine. Princess, you're about to learn the most important lesson about human warfare. We never leave anyone behind. Princess Lyra Lee sat in the small transport ship, watching the Krillian flagship grow larger through the viewport. The massive vessel stretched for miles, its black hull covered in spikes and weapons. It looked like something built by nightmares. Marcus Chen sat across from her, dressed as a Zephyrian guard. The disguise was perfect. He had changed his skin color, altered his facial features, even adjusted his height. Only his eyes remained the same. Those cold, calculating eyes that saw every angle, every possibility. Remember the plan, he said quietly. You're here to formally surrender. Act defeated but not broken. They want to see your spirit crushed but not completely destroyed. It's more satisfying for them that way. Lyra Lee nodded. She wore simple white robes, the traditional dress of surrender. But hidden in the fabric were small devices that Lieutenant Knox had given her. Communication tools, tracking devices, and one other thing that Chen had refused to explain. What happens if your plan doesn't work? She asked. Chen looked at her for a long moment. Then we improvise. Humans are very good at improvising. The transport ship docked with the Krillian flagship. As the airlock opened, the smell hit them first. Krillians smelled like metal and death, as if violence was part of their biology. 6 Krillian warriors waited for them. Each one stood 8 feet tall, covered in dark scales and carrying weapons that could cut through starship armor. Their leader spoke in the harsh, guttural language of his people. Chen translated. He says the war leader Krexthal is honored by your presence. He looks forward to your execution. Lyra Lee forced herself to remain calm. She had studied Krillian culture. They respected only strength and feared only pain. Everything else was weakness to be exploited. They were escorted through corridors filled with trophy rooms. Captured weapons, preserved body parts of defeated enemies, recordings of famous victories. The Krillians wanted their prisoners to understand their fate. Chen walked slightly behind her, playing the role of a defeated guard. But Lyra Lee noticed his eyes. He was counting steps, memorizing turns, cataloging every weapon and every weakness they passed. The command bridge was massive. Hundreds of Krillian officers worked at their stations, coordinating the movements of the entire fleet. At the center sat war leader Krexthal, a monster among monsters. His scales were black as space, and scars covered his arms from 1,000 battles. Krexthal spoke, and his voice filled the bridge like thunder. Chen translated again. He says you are smaller than he expected. He thought the Zephyrian princess would be more impressive. Lyra Lee stepped forward. She had rehearsed this moment, but facing the actual monster was different. I bring you the formal surrender of the Zephyrian Empire. My father begs for mercy for our people. Krexthal laughed. The sound was like grinding metal. Mercy? Your people will serve as slaves until they die. Your worlds will become feeding grounds for our young. And you, little princess, will die slowly, so all the galaxy can see what happens to those who resist us." Lyrelei felt fear rise in her throat, but she forced it down. "I understand. But first, my father wishes to broadcast a message to all Zephyrian worlds. He wants them to know that surrender is the only choice." The war leader considered this. "Yes, let them all see their princess bow before Krillian might." "Begin the broadcast." The bridge crew activated the communication systems. Every Krillian ship in the fleet would be watching. Every Krillian leader would witness their moment of triumph. It was exactly what Chen had predicted. Lyrelei knelt before the war leader. The humiliation burned, but she thought of her people. Somewhere in the darkness of space, Zephyrian ships disguised as supply vessels were moving into position. Chen's plan was already in motion. "People of the Zephyrian Empire," she began. "I stand before War Leader Krexthul to formally surrender our worlds to the Krillian Horde. Resistance is futile. Submit and you may live as slaves." The words tasted like poison, but she spoke them clearly. Across the Krillian fleet, thousands of aliens celebrated. Their victory was complete. The proud Zephyrians had been broken. But as she spoke, she saw Chen move. Slowly, carefully, he was positioning himself near a weapons console. His hand moved to his belt where he carried a small device that looked like a standard translator. Krexthul stood up, towering over the kneeling princess. "Now you will die as an example to all who would resist us." Guards, prepare the— He never finished the sentence. Chen's device activated, sending a signal that Lieutenant Knox had been waiting for. Across the Krillian fleet, communication systems erupted with false orders. "All ships, emergency maneuvers," came Knox's voice, perfectly mimicking a Krillian commander. "Enemy ships detected in supply convoy. Open fire immediately!" The bridge erupted in confusion. Officers shouted reports, trying to understand what was happening. On the tactical displays, Krillian ships began firing on their own supply vessels. But those supply vessels fired back with weapons no cargo ship should have. Chen was already moving. The device at his belt transformed, unfolding into a weapon unlike anything Lyrelei had ever seen. It was part energy rifle, part plasma cannon, part something else entirely. The first Krillian guard to react died before he could draw his weapon. Chen moved like liquid death, each shot precisely placed. No wasted motion, no unnecessary violence. Just efficient, brutal elimination of threats. War Leader Krexthul roared and charged. He was twice Chen's size, covered in armor and carrying weapons that could cut through steel. But Chen didn't try to fight him directly. Instead, he disappeared. Lyrelei blinked. One moment Chen was there, the next he was gone. Some kind of stealth technology, but more advanced than anything she had imagined. The Krillians fired wildly, trying to hit an enemy they couldn't see. Then Chen reappeared behind the war leader. His weapon had changed again, now resembling a blade made of pure energy. It sliced through Krillian armor like paper. Krexthul fell and the bridge fell silent. For a moment no one moved. Then Chen spoke in perfect Krillian, his voice carrying across the communication systems to every ship in the fleet. "This is the human fleet. Your war leader is dead. Your command structure is broken. Your ships are firing on each other. You have one choice. Surrender now or join your leader." Through the bridge windows, Lyrelei could see the battle raging outside. Krillian ships fired on each other, following false orders from Lieutenant Knox. Disguised Zephyrian vessels emerged from the chaos, striking at command ships and supply lines. But it was the psychological effect that mattered most. The Krillians had believed they were invincible. They had never seen their war leader defeated. They had never experienced an enemy who could turn their own strength against them. Chen helped Lyrelei to her feet. "Princess, are you injured?" "No," she said, though her voice shook. "But I don't understand. How did you kill him so easily? Krexthul was supposed to be the greatest warrior in their empire." Chen looked at the body of the war leader. "Princess, being the best warrior in your empire doesn't matter if your empire has never faced humans. We don't fight fair. We fight to win." On the tactical displays, Krillian ships began surrendering. Without their leadership, without their confidence, they collapsed like a house built on sand. The mighty horde that had conquered half the galaxy was fleeing in panic. Lyrelei watched it all happen. In less than an hour, Chen had turned certain defeat into total victory. Not through superior firepower or better ships, but through understanding the enemy better than they understood themselves. "Mr. Chen," she said quietly, "I think I'm beginning to understand why everyone fears humans. Chen holstered his weapon and looked at her. "Princess, you haven't seen anything yet." "This was the easy part." "Easy?" she asked. "Destroying an enemy is simple. The hard part comes next. We have to decide what to do with the survivors, how to prevent this from happening again, and how to sleep at night knowing what we've done." Chen's expression grew distant. "That's the part that separates humans from monsters. We remember what we've done, and we carry that weight forever." 3 days after the battle, Princess Lirelei found Marcus Chen standing alone on the observation deck of the Zephyrian flagship. Through the transparent walls, she could see the wreckage of the Krillian fleet, floating in the void. Thousands of ships reduced to twisted metal and fading energy signatures. Chen hadn't changed his expression once since the fighting ended. He looked tired but not satisfied, more like a man who had completed a necessary but unpleasant task. "You're not celebrating," Lirelei said, joining him at the window. "Should I be?" Chen asked. "We just killed 300,000 intelligent beings." "Intelligent beings who would have wiped out my entire species," she replied. "Intelligent beings who had already destroyed dozens of worlds." Chen nodded slowly. "Yes, and that's what makes us different from them. We remember the cost." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the debris drift past. Each piece of wreckage represented lives lost, families destroyed, futures ended. The magnitude of it was overwhelming. "I need to understand something," Lirelei said. "Why do humans fight the way you do? Other species have rules, codes of honor, traditions that govern warfare. But we fight like savages," Chen finished for her. "Yes, I know how it looks." He turned to face her, and for the first time since they met, she saw real emotion in his eyes. Pain, weariness, and something else. Something that might have been shame. "Princess, when humans first reached the stars, we were like your people. We had rules, honor codes, traditions. We believed in fair fights and noble deaths. We thought the universe would reward us for being civilized." Chen walked to another window, one that showed the stars beyond the battlefield. "The first alien species we encountered were called the Drakari. Beautiful creatures, 6 limbs, crystalline bodies that sang when they moved. We approached them with gifts, offers of friendship, cultural exchange." "What happened?" Lirelei asked, though she suspected she already knew. "They saw our peaceful intentions as weakness, our gifts as tribute, our friendship as submission." Chen's voice grew quiet. "They destroyed our first colony while our ambassadors were still on their homeworld, talking about trade agreements." Lirelei felt a chill run down her spine. "How many people died?" 50,000. Men, women, children. They didn't even try to fight back. They believed until the very end that it was all a misunderstanding that could be resolved through dialogue." Chen turned back to the window, showing the Krillian wreckage. "The second species we met were the Hektar Collective. We tried a different approach. Show of strength, formal military protocols, proper respect for their power. We thought maybe the Drakari had been an exception. The Hektar pretended to negotiate for 3 months, all while positioning their fleets around our core worlds. When they struck, they coordinated perfectly. 12 human worlds all attacked simultaneously." Lirelei closed her eyes. "How many that time?" 2 billion, including my wife and daughter." The words hung in the air like a physical weight. Lirelei stared at Chen, seeing him in a completely different light. This wasn't a monster who enjoyed violence. This was a man who had lost everything. "After that," Chen continued, "humanity learned a lesson that your people have never had to learn. The universe doesn't care about your honor. The universe doesn't reward civilized behavior. The universe is full of predators, and they see civilization as food. So you became predators yourselves," Lirelei said. "We became something worse. We became the thing that predators fear." Chen's reflection in the window looked like a ghost. "We learned to think like them, to be more ruthless than them, to be more frightening than them. Because that was the only way to survive." Lieutenant Knox entered the observation deck, her face grim. "Captain, we've finished interrogating the Krillian survivors. You need to hear this." Chen straightened, becoming the cold military commander again. "Report. The Krillians weren't acting alone. They're part of something called the Convergence. Multiple species working together to eliminate what they call inferior civilizations. The Zephyrians were just one target on a very long list." Lirelei felt her stomach drop. "How many species are in this convergence?" 17 that we know of, including some that humanity has never encountered." Knox handed Chen a datapad. "The Krillians were considered expendable, a test to see how strong Zephyrian defenses really were." Chen studied the data. his face growing darker with each line. They're planning to attack the core Zephyrian worlds next. 20 fleets, each one larger than what we just faced. When? Lirelei asked. 6 months, maybe less. Lirelei looked between Chen and Nox. Can you stop them? Chen was quiet for a long moment. Princess, the human fleet that defended your homeworld? 7 ships and 40 personnel. That's all we could spare without leaving our own worlds vulnerable. Against 20 full fleets? We'll do what we always do. We'll find a way, but it won't be pretty, and it won't be honorable, and when it's over, we'll have to live with what we've done. Chen turned back to the window. Princess, you asked me why humans fight the way we do. The answer is simple. We learned that in a universe full of monsters, sometimes you have to become the biggest monster to protect the people you love. Lirelei thought about everything she had witnessed. The deception, the manipulation, the brutal efficiency of human warfare. She thought about the Krillian war leader, who had seemed invincible until he met someone more ruthless than himself. Mr. Chen, she said quietly, when this war began, I was terrified of you. I thought you were a monster who would corrupt everything good about my people. Chen looked at her, waiting. I understand now. You didn't become a monster by choice. You became a monster because the universe forced that choice on you. And the fact that you remember the cost, that you carry the weight of what you've done, that's what separates you from the real monsters. Chen smiled. And for the first time since they met, it looked genuinely sad. Princess, you understand humans better than most humans do. The question is, what will your people do with that understanding? Lirelei looked out at the wreckage again. Each piece of debris represented a choice between survival and honor, between pragmatism and principles. Her father had chosen survival. Now she had to help her people understand why that was the right choice. We'll learn, she said finally. We'll learn to fight the way you fight. We'll learn to think the way you think, because the alternative is extinction. And we'll remember, she continued. We'll remember that every brutal choice we make is to protect something beautiful. We'll carry that weight just like you do. Chen nodded slowly. Then there's hope for the galaxy yet. But Princess, remember this. The moment you stop feeling the weight of these choices, the moment they become easy, that's the moment you become the very thing you're fighting against. Lieutenant Nox spoke again. Captain, we have 3 hours before we need to depart. The Terran Defense Command wants us back for strategic planning. Chen straightened, the moment of vulnerability passing. Understood. Begin departure preparations. As Nox left, Lirelei reached out and touched Chen's arm. Will we see you again? Probably. The Convergence won't give up after losing 1 fleet. They'll come back stronger, more prepared. And when they do, you'll need us again. And we'll be ready, Lirelei said with certainty. We'll be ready to fight like humans. Chen smiled one last time. Princess, that's the most terrifying thing anyone has ever said to me. And I've heard some very terrifying things. As he walked away to prepare for departure, Lirelei remained at the window. She thought about fear and courage, about honor and survival, about the price of civilization in an uncivilized universe. She had been terrified of the human warrior. Now she understood that her terror had been justified. But she also understood that sometimes being terrified of your own protector was the price of being